Good evening, Vicksburg. We'll call to order tonight's Village Council regular session, November 22nd, 2021. At this time, we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all join us, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Some challenging times we're in. I'm going to take a moment of silence tonight and acknowledge, how a beautiful event in a Christmas parade can turn tragic with 48 people injured and 5 dead. So we'll take a moment here to remember this. And Mr. Mallory, if you do roll call, please.
Roll call for Village Council meeting November 22nd, 2021. Trustee Olson.
Here.
Trustee Holmes.
Here.
Trustee Keller.
Here.
Trustee Reister.
Here.
Trustee Merrill.
Here.
President Frisbee.
Here.
And Trustee Wagner is out of town, excused.
We have an agenda for tonight's meeting in front of us. Anyone had any changes, any staff recommendations or changes at this time?
There will be couple grammar changes on the minutes, one and the spelling of Tanya DeLong's name that we will have in the permanent record.
Thank you, sir. Any additions by the council? Changes, recommendations? Hearing none. Entertain a motion for approval of tonight's agenda.
Merrill, so moved.
Reister, support.
Trustee Merrill made the motion and Trustee Reister support. I'm going to do a voice roll call on this. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? We have an agenda. Scheduled appearances for the evening. Jim, I see none on the list. No public officials. No one's
No, sir.
called in late.
No, sir.
At this time, we have citizens' comments for agenda and non-agenda items. Citizens, please state your full name and home address and limit their comments to 4 minutes at this time. If you would like to approach the podium.
Yes, my name is Rebecca Walters. I live at 420 South Kalamazoo Ave here in Vicksburg. After attending the fire board meeting and directly asking about Vicksburg needing to relocate the firehouse, which they did confirm that we will be moving or rebuilding the firehouse, I proceeded to ask about funding. They proceeded to tell me that it would be up to our individual municipalities, that we will be splitting it with the other municipalities that will be sharing our firehouse. With that being said, I think we need to start looking into the budget now to figure out if we need to start fundraising, if we need to start figuring out what to do, because the way it was explained was that that money does not come from our taxes. And that if we do not have the money there, we will have to create a tax to do so. So if we get on this now with plenty of time, we can avoid a tax if need be. With that being said, I would also hope that the fire board budget was actually looked at before it was approved, because it was not discussed, and that whole conversation was a complete saddening thing to watch when they decided to laugh about whether or not board members were following protocols and back and forth while discussing a budget. So I really hope that that was looked at in detail before approving that. I also would like to discuss the manganese. I did talk with Alex and Jim about the manganese in our water, and also contacted the EPA representative for our region, and he also did state that we are doing what we need to be doing as a village, but was not aware of the studies going on that are furthering investigations onto the effects of manganese with kids and pregnant women. With that being said, I'm asking that we change our advisory to the kids to age limit 2 and to include pregnant women. Therefore, if these studies come back that it is not, the levels are not as safe as they should be for everybody else, for pregnant or a little bit older kids, we are being proactive about it. We're already ahead of it, just like we are now. But if it's not, I mean, we're being safe to be on the safe side. And that is all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walters. Any others at this time would like to make any comments? Seeing none, move on to item 9, approval of our general consent agenda, which includes minutes of our regular council meeting November 1st, 2021, warrant reports, event request, and correspondence. Was none. Everyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes, and any clarifications or comments, or?
Jim, you said the minutes were going to be corrected, correct?
Yes. And 2 grammar errors in the first name spelling of Tanya. I think we had T-O-N-Y, and it's T-A.
I move is corrected.
Holmes, second.
Trustee Keller, motion, with second from Holmes. We'll have to do a roll call, if you would, please, Mr. Mallory.
Roll call vote. Trustee Reister.
Yes.
Trustee Holmes.
Yes.
Trustee Olson.
Yes.
President Pro Temp Keller.
Yes.
Trustee Merrill.
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. So we have 3 items on, action items on the council tonight. We'll start off with number 11, destruction of trees on village-owned property. I think a few of us have had conversations on that. If there's any more information you'd like to ask of myself or Jim.
Can we get an overview, Jim, on what actually occurred?
Yeah, sometime this late summer and fall, there was removal of village-owned trees and other foliage and ground on village property without village permission. And what this action is authorizing myself, along with President Frisbee, to explore all options that the village has reference this situation, and any final action and or potential settlement or resolution, I think would be a better word, would come back in front of this board for a final vote. But it gives us the authority to represent the village's interest in this matter.
Jim, I assume this was a private individual that did this. Were they aware that the trees and that were not on their property line and was on village property?
That's correct. An individual citizen has the obligation to know where their property line begins and ends. And yes, we're fully believing that they knew where the property lines were.
Jim, I take it this is on the south end of Angels Crossing on the property line?
Yes,
Okay,
it's on village-owned property.
right.
Any other questions of staff? And questions of myself? This is a motion to enter us into, it gives us the options and to explore on the behalf of the village what our remedy, ultimate remedy may be or could be. I'd entertain a motion of support.
I will make that motion. I move to authorize the village manager and the village president to explore all legal options, including litigation, to seek reimbursement to the village for the damage done to village property, including mass destruction of trees between C.B. McDonald Way residential property line and Barton Lake Waterway. and to take all steps necessary to carry out this instruction of the council. Any proposed resolution or settlement must be brought before the council for review and approval.
Trustee Keller, I'll second that.
Motion made by trustee Reister, seconded by trustee Keller. We have a roll call, please, Jim.
Yes, trustee Merrill,
Yes.
President Pro Temp Keller,
Yes.
trustee Reister,
Yes.
trustee Olson,
Yes.
trustee Holmes,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. Thank you.
Motion
We'll
passes.
move on to item 12, Angels Crossing, golf course equipment needed. The purchase of the following equipment for Angels Crossing Golf Course Maintenance Department, 50 horsepower John Deere mower. We had talked about this, I believe, in the last meeting, that we had anticipated more purchases coming. Just to be quite clear, none of this money is general fund money. It comes from the revenue stream of the golf course itself. It looks like he got a really good deal through this government agency of low bid.
Yeah, and that's what we're waiting on is not some of this golf course equipment, looking for that state guaranteed low price, and this tractor came back in time to present tonight, and it was approximately about a $10,000 savings.
And it's new.
It's brand new. It's a brand new 50 horse four-wheel drive, big John Deere tractor equipped for the golf course. Predominantly will be used to pull their rough mowers, larger type of equipment around, and they'll then have two of the 50 horse tractors to be able to use, so far more efficient and be very positive for the course.
Jim, just to confirm that no funds for this purchase will come from the general fund. This will come from the Golf Course Enterprise Fund.
Correct, all golf course revenue that we've been saving. We knew that we've, I think it was the last meeting or maybe 2 meetings ago, about $171,500 worth of equipment was authorized. That was entire golf course revenue money, as this will be. And any equipment request to purchase we put in front of the council will only come from golf course revenue.
Thank you.
Well, we have a request from the staff to enter into a purchase agreement. What is the desire of the council?
Merrill here. I'd like to support the approval of the village manager entering into an agreement with John Deere Steensmos Agency to purchase a 50 horsepower tractor by Angels Crossing Golf Club.
If I could, President Frisbee, just to put on the record, the total cost won't exceed $28,014.05.
Trustee Olson, I second that.
We have a motion by trustee Merrill and a support by trustee Olson. We'll do a roll call vote. I must add that Mr. Wagner also supports this, as he just texted me.
We'll just clarify that those are comments of support.
Comments of support.
When the roll call vote occurs, we'll call the people in attendance. That eliminates one of the 5 that are watching right now then. So we have a motion by trustee Merrill, seconded by trustee Olson. The roll call vote. Trustee Holmes.
Yes.
President Pro Temp Keller.
Yes.
Trustee Merrill.
Yes.
Trustee Reister.
Yes.
Trustee Olson.
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. Item 12 passes. Moving on to rezoning of 3 parcels of land within the village. Mr. Durkey's going to speak to it, and Mr. Mallory will speak to it tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate, this all on, Alex,
Doesn't sound like it is.
Appreciate that, Alex. I must start out, I'm a little bit nervous in this meeting. We do have, last look, 6 people viewing this live on YouTube. I feel the need, in case one is my mother, why I'm wearing this hat inside a room right now. Mom, it's because people who graduate from Western Michigan University do so with honor and integrity when they place a bet with one of the trustees who went to some other school in Michigan. The school up north there will honor that bet and wear this hat. It's constricting my ability to think logical. What we have is we're going to have Bobby Durkey, who's an expert in the area of zoning. I think important to the council and the public to be aware is we have multiple parcels within our village who have been used for commercial purposes for decades in residentially zoned areas. This has been on our radar to get to that best practice municipality. We were looking at the spring of 2022, taking all of the properties at once and getting them to a conforming use. The property, the 3 parcels in front of you tonight came a little bit ahead, and I'll let Bobby explain that in more detail and why we are recommending it to be rezoned C2. But again, we're dealing with the parcels where the funeral home is currently located and the parking lot is located. This issue was publicly noticed, and letters to the impacted area were distributed. It was noticed for the Planning Commission meeting earlier this month. Was a discussion at that meeting. Ultimately, was recommended by the Planning Commission 7-1 to support this recommendation for a classification of C2. The funeral home's been in business since 1934. That entire time, not only operating as a funeral home for the citizens of our community, but also a residence within the same building. That's the essence of why C2 versus C1. It's a multi-use, but Bobby can get into the technicalities and answer questions about that. The unique opportunity that presented itself on the 3rd parcel of land is the owners of the funeral home seeing a need and a desire to service the citizens of Vicksburg and the surrounding areas. We're able to purchase that remaining parcel on the north end of this block, which is bordered by Main Street, Park, and the alley. And that is a village alley. It's a registered alley. So it would be, the staff recommendation is for support to move this to a C2 zoned classification. And the 3rd parcel would be developed by the owner to enhance the services that are provided at those celebration of life events. We did receive letters of support from Mike Oswalt and his wife, Rudy Callan, and the Vicksburg Community Schools. And Bobby will go into that as the Vicksburg Community Schools also seeing the services that are provided to the community have made their parking lot available for events at that location in the future. But we have invested greatly in Bobby Durkey, and he deserves all the credit as he spends the time researching this. So So with that, Mr. Durkee, and so everyone is aware, after the vote, regardless of the results, Bobby I have excused from the meeting, as he's a father of 4 young girls and needs to get home to be a father of those girls. So come on up, Bobby.
Thanks, Jim. That's quite an intro. You said 5 viewers? And don't let Jim fool you. He knows more about planning and zoning than he lets off. Good evening, council. As Jim said, what you have in front of you is a proposal to rezone the 3 parcels. 2 make up the funeral home and parking lot, and 1 is a house on Park Street there. And they kind of square off the property. So I'll briefly go over the bigger picture that Jim was talking about, some of these commercial properties, typically what I call the original parts of the village or the core parts of the village. And then I'll narrow it down to this particular property. As Jim said, probably in the last couple of years, looking at the zoning map or proposals, a few glaring nonconformities come out in this part of town. For example, the Shell station or Fink's grocery store and the funeral home was already seen as one of these commercial uses where it's all zoned R2. And R2 is a single family zoning. The vast majority of the residential areas in town are R2. Prairie Street and downtown are all C2 for comparison. So separately from that process, from the target thing that Jim and I had talked about as staff or future goals, and some of this stuff is laid out in the master plan to create zones for some of these more nuanced uses, mixed uses. And I think Jim put in the packet a little bit of work the Planning Commission had done a few years ago to permit the mixed uses in C2, which was a big motivator for that particular zoning designation. And then earlier in the year, the funeral home reached out to the village about a potential expansion. And the conversation at that point was, well, it's zoned this way, you really can't expand because it's residential. However, we've been looking at this bigger proposal, this bigger idea. So recognizing that capacity at this time to do a rezoning of probably anywhere from 5 to 10 parcels, because there's parking lots and some other commercial uses. I've provided some maps.
Yeah, that was helpful.
So since they were doing this and the village was already seeking it, my personal thought was this is a way to introduce the project to the community, planning commission, council, while at the same time, looking at the expansion needs of this business. So recognizing that one of those is a house and would be an area where they would expand the funeral home onto, so there would be a loss of a residential property. And some of the considerations were it's mixed use, it's been there a long time, and the availability of parking really made a difference because the use requires more parking than you could fit on that property. So there was an added advantage of maintaining a commercial use without creating a sea of asphalt around it. So I thought that was something unique as well. And then just as an additional supplement to the maps, I put special uses, which are government buildings, schools, or churches, typically not single-family houses. I put a map of those as well to demonstrate that these, while at the zoning map you would see R2, there are these, gathering more intensive uses kind of scattered in this part of town, which makes sense because a lot of the development there predates zoning in the village, which I believe was enacted in the 60s. So as Jim said, we presented it to the Planning Commission, and one of the more pertinent questions was, why C2 instead of C1? C1 would permit a lighter series of uses, a lower intensity commercial, where C2 permits a higher intensity of uses. Between the fact that Main Street in that portion isn't a high traffic area, the inability to take an old building and retrofit it, or the inability without having that parking lot at the school district would naturally limit uses. So while it could permit more intensive uses such as grocery stores or auto service, a thought was given that the practicality of that use or the business sense of it perhaps isn't there. And some of the long-term master plan ideas of creating more of these medium commercial uses, which would limit your more intensive uses but permit your mixed use. They call it workplace. I think either these future areas to rezone or including this one would be targets for that potential use. And working within the confines of our ordinance, C2 was the closest to meet what they were seeking to do. And if the rezoning is approved, that they do intend to move on to site plan review with the proposed expansion. So if there's any questions on any of that, I'd be glad to answer them.
Bobby, if I could just add some comments, as the council's designate to attend planning commission meetings, I just wanted to share with everyone, there was robust conversation around this. The meeting went long. There was really a lot of discussion around the C1, C2, and rightfully so. I think that's what's really good about that conversation is that we looked really hard at this. And I think, personally, from my perspective, how I look at this is that we have an old community. And when we look at trying to take that old community and then rezone some properties, as has been mentioned, as multiple ones. And we may be going through this with them as well, because we're trying to take this small rural community that, for the most part, there wasn't zoning that regulated this over the course of the history of this village, and then it's only been in recent times that there is. And so there's a level of pragmatism that we have to have here. We have an existing business, and the owner is committed to investing, in this community. And having talked with Steve and his family, it's very clear that, they own other, funeral homes around the community, and they can invest in those if they would like. He doesn't. He wants to invest in Vicksburg. And I think that says a lot. And so from my perspective, I think that in looking at the location of it, it's an established business. It's been there. It's an asset to the community. It's the only funeral home we have. As a kid, we may remember the Kreitz Funeral Home. That wasn't a home, folks. Today, people live in that home. And if you go inside, the Mcgowan C-Corp Funeral Home, you know right away, you're inside a house. The boards creak when you walk. It's a house. And so, again, there's a level of pragmatism I think that we need to have here, and that we had the ability to kind of see a plan, a side view of what this building's going to look like. And I'll tell you what it looks like, really, to me, is a really nice structure. It doesn't really look commercial at all. It actually looks like a nice hall, so to say. And so I just wanted to share those comments with my fellow trustees. And again, robust discussion around this. No one took the easy path on this, and I think we really explored all the things that needed to be when you look at something like this, and you realize that we're in a we're in a residential neighborhood. What can we do with this property that's fair to everybody?
There's reference in the master plan of the village residential parcels, and we have exclusively called out on page 53, the map, that shows the funeral home parcels as commercial. So we've addressed this in past planning meetings, addressed it in our future planning master plan. So it's always been considered commercial. One of the comments that came up from the discussions of the Planning Commission, rightfully so, was the future state. If it was to be sold, if the business failed, and if it was to be sold commercial, you could move a party store into the location. So that was part of the discussion and concern of going to a C2. But it's been there forever. It's been our funeral home for years. I have to believe that the future holds for Mcgowan C-Corp is a continuation of that business model. And I think to perhaps put some of the fears to rest, the residents, that if it ever happened, they would have a lot of hurdles to get over to become something other than what they are. And rightfully, the 7 of us up here.
Right.
So it's something as needed. It wasn't planned to be brought forth so quickly. As Jim stated earlier, it was to be considered with the overall master plan review. But as we find ourselves with a lot of things, it is brought upon us quickly. And Bobby, thank you for the information in the background and the research that you gave to us. It was quite eye-opening and appreciated. Are there any other comments or questions? One I had about is the residence vacant now?
Yes.
Yeah, and it has been for several years, correct?
I don't know the length of time.
Okay, good. I would like to know a little bit about what you're going to do with that piece of the property.
Jim, I have one last question. We know the letters in favor of it. We also know that notice went out to the neighbors and people in the neighborhood. Did anybody submit any, was there a response of people in dissent on this?
There was not. The letters of support will come up in the next couple of agenda items, which also gives anyone in the audience the opportunity to comment in support and or opposed if they're here tonight, as we move forward. And after those public comments, then council comments would initiate. This is more a time to ask staff the questions. I will caution the council, the action in front of you tonight is only the rezoning. If rezoned to this, then it would be the owner and developer's choice if they proceed forward with a site plan. If that were to occur, the avenue that is here in the village of Vicksburg, that site plan would be reviewed by the Planning Commission and move forward in that manner. So the action in front of the council tonight, though you certainly can ask the questions, I would caution the council that those answers aren't bearing of the reclassification of the zoning.
Okay, so with that, I lost my way. So we're at staff presentation, Mr. Durkee. Is there anything further, Bobby, you would like to bring to the?
No, I think the only thing I would add, not directly related, is maybe just that early discussion point about the need of a workplace type zoning in the village consistent with the master plan. I think that conversation would be good with the master plan review in 22, but just while this is here, I would describe that almost as a C1 zone, but permits residential. So again, this is working within the ordinance options we had today in the code. So, but I think some of these discussion points highlight the need for another mixed use zone in the village, something low intensity uses, maybe think offices, small retail with residential components.
Thank you, Bobby. Well, we'll move on to public comments and support. If anyone would like to make comments, please step to the podium.
My name is Steve Mcgowan, and I am the owner of 409 South Main and 114 Park. And before I say my words, I do want to just take a minute and acknowledge all the work that Bobby and Jim have put into this. It means a lot. They've been very helpful. Their knowledge has been way more than I could ever bring to this project. The funeral home has been here since, as Jim said, 1934. I am fortunate enough to be able to take over for the Durham family. I worked for the Durham family since 2003. The funeral home's last renovations were in the 1970s. The property on Park was not just purchased, it was purchased by the Durham family back in the 70s. So we didn't just purchase this to be able to do renovation. So it's always been a part of the funeral home corner, so to speak. Sheldon Durham rented that house out for many years. It has sat vacant since 2015. And we purchased the business and the properties in 2018. So in the last few years, my wife and I tried to make some decisions on what we felt would be a good way for the business to grow and things that they need, families that we're serving. And this would be the, if we come before the council in the next coming months or so, to show you our site plan, I'd be happy to go through that with you and the thought behind those plans. But we were fortunate that Sheldon Durham, back in the 70s, saw the village growing. And he saw this property was for sale, bought it at that time, and maintained it until there was a use for it, for the funeral home. So that's the history I wanted to give you on that. And want to, again, thank Jim and Bobby and also my wife and 3 of our 5 kids here to be here and support with us tonight. So during your council comments, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them again. Oh, go ahead.
I just have a question. Why was that vacant so long? Was it because the parking lot was so active, or were there issues with the building? Because rentals are going like hotcakes right now.
Yeah, Julie, that's a great question.
I'm just curious.
It's sat vacant since 2015. The Durhams, at that time, Maryland was not doing well, and they didn't want to get into another rental agreement with anybody. During that time, before Maryland passed, there was some major damage, water damage inside the building. And Jenny and I have, because we looked at possibly renovating it after we bought it in 2018. And the developers that we talked to, actually a couple of them had told us that you'll be putting money over money and still having what you have. So that's why we decided not to do that.
Steve, if you could share with us what your plans are with this property and why, what's going on in the industry, your industry, and why you feel that there's a need to, that this be addressed here at your chapel here in Vicksburg.
I appreciate that. In the past few years, we've had many members of our community use other funeral homes, and they have that right to, first of all, but a lot of them are people I knew personally really well, and I asked them after the fact if there was something we did or something that I needed to know about our business that made them make that decision to go outside our community for that service. And they all said it was the building was too small. They wanted to have an event that spoke more to how they live their life with some food and I wouldn't like to say entertainment because we're not in the entertainment business, I don't think, but some days it seems like it. But they wanted events that we couldn't hold. As you said earlier, the building's been there since 1934. It's a 100-year-old building, and it was important to Jenny and I to keep that historical aspect of the funeral home and possibly use this other parcel to bring something new, but still keep the old. And our plan is when we do this project, we are going to do some renovations to the facade of the building so both buildings match one another, but will help, in our opinion, preserve what we have and make it look a little nicer than what we have right now. But I can't take a whole lot of credit. Jenny helped a lot with the structural look of the building, and it was important, she felt, to have it look a part of that corner. So it's, like you said, it's not going to look like a big commercial building. It's going to look like it fits inside the space it's in, because we don't want to, upset anybody that lives in that area. And it's been a residence since 1934. We do have somebody that lives at the funeral home, and we just want to, keep on doing what the Durham started. That we're only in business because of what they started. And so, you know, I understand any concerns for what that property could be. I've been a funeral director for 30 years. Just want to assure everybody this is not a hobby for me. Taking care of our community means a lot to me. And I want our community to be able to have a place they can be proud of. So.
Thank you, Mr. McCowan.
All right.
Are there others who would like to speak in support?
I have a question first. You said that the residents around were notified? There's 3 of us, 3 different residents, that we never received a letter. We never got notice. Me hearing this right here today is the first time of hearing any of this plan, and I live on that alley. I have a couple of questions on how will that alley be impacted when this happens? Your business is about to get some influx to it. Right now, we already have a hellacious time getting out of that alley with any funeral that is in attendance, because there is no respect to get in and out of that alley. And in the winter, it is miserable because it's not salted. I know the guests that you have there have a blast getting on that road with parking because of that. How is this alley going to be affected? I've already been affected by this alley and your residents when they took 6 to 8 inches of my driveway, but gave you it because of your flowers on your fence line, which I have contacted before. You guys are about to impact the residents on that street, and we're not even aware of it with this notice that you said that we never got. 4 different people, my house, behind me, that whole corner, from Tony Frisbee to me to the people behind us, there's no notice. We've heard nothing. And we're about to be impacted by this, by the construction, by all of that. And we're given no notice, and you guys are going to vote on that tonight? How about the rest of my neighbors hear about this first and we talk to them? Because this is not okay.
Yeah, I just need to clarify, this is not a meeting to approve any continuation or expansion or building of any properties. It is to rezone that property to cover its current use.
Which will still impact the traffic that we have to deal with to get in and out of that alley, whether it be storms of snow or summer days. It is still not easy to navigate that alley when they have a service there. And if you're about to expand and change that zoning, it's going to be worse. There needs to be parking thought of or a different situation before you try to expand and zone that to expand their business for that. We are not prepared in that alleyway at all for that. And if you try to get, like, what building's going on there? How is it going to affect the alley? Is it gonna change our visibility to get in and out of that alley? That's all I have right now.
That's yet to be seen. We're just voting on the zoning, its current state, its future state of zoning tonight. And that's what is in front of us. I personally lived on that road for all my life growing up. Don't recall having any problems on it, but
President Frisbee, the way I understand it, this still has to go back before the Planning Commission for any
Absolutely.
approval.
Can I
Any
clarify
concerns
that?
would be brought up to that.
Can I clarify? First, the issue was noticed in MLive. The notice went out to residents that are within 300 feet. Those are the mailings. I don't know. I have the list of those residents. That's the foot, and that was done, and it was noticed for November 8th, I believe, was the date that it was at the Planning Commission. The issue in front is a reclassification of zoning. The site plan, which would be reviewed by staff and ultimately in front of the Planning Commission, which would be publicly noticed through our public agenda, where citizens would have the ability to comment in favor or not in favor. But it's 2 separate issues. The issue tonight is rezoning. We do have letters in support that I need to read into the record, as well as public comments opposed. So we were under public comments in support.
That was my impression.
Yes.
And if you would continue with that, please, Jim.
Certainly. We received a letter on October 26, 2021 for the Village of Vicksburg Planning Commission. Please accept this letter of support for the Mcgowan C-Corp Funeral Home Expansion Project. It's from the Vicksburg Community Schools, and it says VCS will allow the use of available parking spaces at the Vicksburg Administration Building located at 301 South Kalamazoo Avenue, Vicksburg, Michigan, as needed for overflow parking to accommodate the expansion. It is understood that Mcgowan and C-Corp Funeral Home will communicate with VCS Central Office prior to the service or event if it anticipates a need for overflow parking. And then it has, if we as staff have questions, but it's signed Kevin O'Neill, Superintendent. We received from Rudy Callan. Jim, I saw the drawing of the proposed Mcgowan C-Corp Funeral Home expansion and talked to Steve about the what and why of it. Sounds like a smart business move and a great expanded service for Vicksburg to stay local. Hopefully the Planning Commission and Council approve the project. As always, thanks for managing the village. Rudy. Received the following letter in support from Mike and Julie Oswald. Let us start by apologizing for not being at this meeting to speak to you in person. We would be here to support Steve and Jenny if we could. The Mcgowan and C-Corp Funeral Home has been a wonderful asset for this community for generations. We are very fortunate to have a local funeral home to care for our loved ones when they pass away. Steve and Jenny have done a wonderful job of being members of this community who care for us and our loved ones during our most vulnerable time. As our community continues to grow, we are compelled to maintain the small town family-oriented feel that Sheldon, Marilyn, and John Durham and the Ruperts before them cultivated. Speaking from experience, it is very comforting to know that as we go through the difficult process of saying goodbye to family members, we can lean on our trusted local funeral home to carry us through this difficult transition. Rezoning this property from residential to commercial will allow our local funeral home to continue to cater to the changing demands and preferences of families who are struggling with the grieving process that we have to face at one time or another. We are in support of rezoning the Mcgowan C-Corp Funeral Home property to commercial. Thank you, Mike and Julie Oswald.
Any other comments or in support?
I just want to say that, like, my building is a commercial 2 building, and if I had the, luxury of being taxed at a residential rate, that would be nice. But it's time to get up to code and pay what should be paid when you're commercial and residential. So I'm in support of switching from residential to commercial too, wholeheartedly. Yeah.
So we have public comments opposed.
I will say I'm opposed in the fact that your neighbors directly next to you were not notified. You went and said 300 feet around that area? They were not. I've just double-checked that myself. You want to change that to residential. It will affect the residents when it comes to that alley. Whether we get in or out to home, I don't want to have to worry about if I'm going to hit 4 people grieving. And you say that, yes, the superintendent can take the overflow. That has yet to happen. They take the sides of the streets. They take up and down everywhere, but they don't go across because nobody wants to walk. It is not convenient in any way, shape, or form. And my daughter and my kids are about to grow up down that alley. We're about to turn it residential for you guys to be able to expand, but there's to handle more people in that area, but we can't handle it on that corner of that spot. It is residential. What about everybody else that is residential in that area? Just because we want to have more people in attendance at funerals doesn't mean that we have to lose our safety and our peace of mind over this. We can't have it classified as commercial right there. Because if they go under, what's going to go in place? But the residents will still be affected because there's no space right there in that area on either end. So I say nay.
Thank you. Any other comments opposed? Jim, did we get any letters of opposition?
None.
None. Well, as we said earlier, that is yet to be seen. I know there was some support, and the last letter of support was around the zoning, which I appreciated the clarification in that. And that is what is in front of this council tonight. You know, our goal has been to be consistent in our application of ordinances and the industrial and the residential and commercial use properties. And this is deemed a residential property, which it needs to be a commercial C2 property, which allows for residents also. So that's what is in front of us today. I would ask that with others' passions that's involved with this, certainly reach out to the community, have a discussion with your neighbors, and come back when that is in front of the Planning Commission, and it'll go in front of the council once again for the C-Corp Mcgowan Funeral Home. But today it is a zoning question in front of us. So I will ask council comments at this time.
President Frisbee, question for staff. Jim, currently, when there is a funeral being held at the funeral home, is parking allowed in that alley?
I don't know about the alley. The alley's wouldn't be parking in the alley. I mean, up until 2005 era, this village shut down pretty much Main Street to park cars to have that funeral home there. The funeral home self-initiated other situations reference parking since that time. But the alley, there shouldn't be anyone parked on the alley. That's a village registered alley that needs continual access.
Okay. The reason for my question is because that's been brought up a few times here in the last few minutes, and I just, impact-wise, from what we currently have as a business operating there versus what potentially down the road would be, whether that was going to be impacted or not as far as vehicular traffic being parked in there or anything else. That's
no,
the
there
reason
won't
my
be.
question.
There won't be parking in the alley. I've never in January I'll complete 6 years of working for the village, never had any inquiries or calls or concerns reference the parking on the funeral home. All of my contacts reference the funeral home as my role as a village manager has been in support.
I just had a question. So when people do park on the street, which they can legally, is there still two traveling lanes?
You're talking on Park and Main, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I know human behavior is to park as close as you can, and be tight, and to cross the street and park at the old L. You know, that's a healthy thing to do. So we'll just see if people use that extra parking in the future as needed.
Yeah, and I think you're a couple blocks to the north and in front of is the Methodist Church that when they have events in the same manner, it's legal parking on a public roadway.
It's allowed.
Jim, this is step one of 5 steps. It's come before us, it's gone to the planning commission, it's come to us, it's gonna go back to the planning commission, and then at some point, it's gonna come back to us again for approval.
I
No.
can clarify that.
Not the
Okay.
zoning, not the
Talking,
zoning.
Well, no, I mean, all we're doing is the zoning. Before anything is done with that property, physically done, it's gonna have to come back to the planning commission.
it will. The steps are, under the rezoning, is you are the approval process to rezone. That's the issue tonight.
Right.
As far as any site plan review, that would go in front of the planning commission, and the planning commission is the decision maker for the village. The site plan review will not come back in front of the council. That's, and it's done that way in the village for all the site plans we've done. So just to clarify
Okay.
that,
Yeah,
any potential site plan for any location will go to the planning commission.
right,
That's what it should be.
right.
Yeah, just to clarify, it just comes back to us if it doesn't meet the setbacks for whatever it's zoned
If there's a
at.
variance,
Correct. That's when we'd be the ZBA, and then we would have authority on that, so,
correct.
yeah, Jim is correct. As far as any site plans go, the planning commission decides it, but if there's a variance that needs to be requested, then it will come back to us.
But basically, this is gonna be turned into a parking lot, basically, right?
You're talking about the third parcel?
Yes,
No,
no,
I don't anticipate that.
okay. All right.
I do anticipate staff working with the developer and understanding input from the community on both sides, but presenting to the planning commission our recommendations based on the existing governance of that property. The first step would be it to be zoned properly. Then after that, that it meets the conformance of the zoning. In this case, we're talking C2, and any potential impact on the area and our ability to influence. Everyone on this council is well aware. Sometimes it comes off wrong, and I'll accept that on my part, but I'm a data person. We will analyze the data, and we'll analyze the ordinance and laws that govern this, and we will give you our recommendation based on the data, on what's best for that area of the village. It fits within the master plan, but rest assured, it would meet the conformance of that zoning. I'm unaware of any accidents ever in that area. Up until a couple people, in one person in the last meeting and one person in this meeting, no one's ever brought forth a parking issue to me. But we will explore all of that in any potential site plan review and any remedial. I can tell you this, I've known Steve and Jenny for years, and I can't think of better people to work with, and I don't think they want, they're gonna do what's best for the community, and I imagine they're gonna do that first, maybe at even some sake at this business, but also, you know, we're in a democracy, so we'll present forward the data and present forward what we feel is best.
Thank you.
Any other comments of council or questions, inquiries? You know, it is in front of us tonight to rezone. The question is to rezone it. Regardless of what happens down the road, if nothing happens in a year, this question is still going to come in front of this council to zone the properties in the village appropriately. And that's what we have in front of us.
And to give the council a little advance, I mean, we're talking the Shell gas station. We're talking the doghouse. We're talking multiple other thriving community businesses that no fault of theirs, no fault of anyone involved in any level of government now, have operated for decades in the manner they've operated. So what this will allow future staff and future councils to do is have appropriate governance over those properties.
Well, we've heard all the comments and questions, and what is the desire of the council?
Make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to reclassify the property at 114 East Park Street, 409 South Main Street to C2 zoning.
Trustee Olson, I second.
Motion by trustee Holmes, seconded by trustee Olson. Let's do a roll call on this, please.
Yeah, roll call vote with the motion made by trustee Holmes, seconded by trustee Olson to rezone the 3 parcels listed in the agenda this evening to C2 classification. Trustee Reister.
Yes.
Trustee Holmes.
Yes.
Trustee Olson.
Yes.
Trustee Merrill.
Yes.
President Pro Temp Keller.
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes.
And the motion passes.
Brings us to the village manager report. Mr. Mallory, if you'd give us an update on the beautiful downtown.
Yeah, thank you. Well, kind of before we get into the report, want to just kind of relay the last couple weeks and highlight some interactions that I've been fortunate to have. I think sometimes in society that we live, people stay attuned to social media and think that's a predominant voice of the many, when in fact it doesn't take into account. We're a community of 3,700 people. We've grown 800 people in just the last 5 years alone, which is a remarkable feat. But it started 2 weeks ago. My eldest son works for the Stryker Corporation, and within his responsibilities, he was at, and he lives in another Oklahoma, to be specific, but in a group setting of Stryker individuals, was introduced to a professional, I don't know her name, I know a female who happens to be, I believe, significant other, is a Stryker employee as well. But when introduced, they relayed to my eldest son how they chose and recently moved to Vicksburg, specifically Trustee Holmes' neighborhood. And they did that in her going for 4 or 5 minutes uninterrupted, talking about all the positive things of the village and the progressive moves and in the downtown, and she wasn't aware if this person from Oklahoma was aware of what's going on in Vicksburg, Michigan, and continued. And when appropriate, he let her know that he grew up in Vicksburg and graduated from high school here, and in fact was related to some people who worked for Vicksburg. But it was that kind of communication, how we're drawn, what in my tenure in life now as a younger executive, to our community that's willing to drive to the Stryker headquarters in Portage, but celebrate the small town walkability and progressiveness we're trying to provide. Back on February the 12th, my wife and I, after hours, went down to the Distant Whistle. It was a Friday night, about 8 o'clock. We're on sidewalks that aren't fully paved yet. Happened to be behind I don't want to mislabel it. I think a retired couple, another generation ahead of Stephanie and I, and just we overheard them talking about how cool this downtown's going to be when it's done. They had no idea we were 15 feet behind them in that, to listen to that conversation. And then on November 18th, Alex Lee and I were having a business meeting at the Rise and Dine one morning. And the table next to us, again, was a couple from a village only a few miles from here. And we were sitting by the window discussing, Alex and I, the one of the bump outs and the colored concrete that was being poured at that time. And they asked us if we were with the outfit putting in the new sidewalks. We explained our role with the village. And they went on and on and on of the positiveness of the village of Vicksburg and the availability, the wide sidewalks, and how cool it was. And though they had their house paid off in this other village, they were certainly looking to try to figure out how to move to this village for the direction it was going. And then I'll conclude with, and I had to jump into those letters. It'll take me 1 second. We're in receipt of an email from a South County elected official, and let me see if I can get this to come up. And this was sent to myself and President Frisbee and President Pro Temp Keller. I know I speak for everyone at South County when I confirm our commitment to work with the Village of Vicksburg on projects going forward. We recognize that Vicksburg is the most dynamic growth area in our county, and it will be critical for us to maintain a relationship with your leadership team. We look forward to the future. And I guess I highlight that, and it validates each time. A lot of people will ask me how things are going. It's been an incredible learning opportunity, this project, and I believe sincerely in my heart it'll impact our community for the next 75 years in a positive manner. I have those contacts. Those are 4 of, I'm not exaggerating, could be over 1,000 contacts in the past year. Related to the village in the direction it's going. So with that being said, I think we've talked about it, how it's just a human nature. If complaints come forward, they come forward each and every time. That if that's an individual predisposed to make a complaint or be negative, that's a predisposition. It plays out. Where the person relaying the positive will relay the positive and move on in that. But overall, it is in the 90th percentile. The people look forward to the future. So let's get to that in the update on the infrastructure project. Hopefully you notice the final grade on Prairie Street, final grade of asphalt on Prairie and Main Street up until the Washington intersection was completed. They did work Saturday. The cement work on the sidewalks is on Prairie Street, probably 95% completed. On Main Street, and Main, I'm talking up into Washington's intersection, there's only a few small sections left that weather being in a positive tomorrow or Wednesday should be completed. We also should see at least the north curb line by the fire department and the northwest corner of Main and Washington have the brown colored sidewalk put in yet this week. We did have conversations today looking at the extended forecast for next week and the favorability as we sit today, that there is a potential that we go ahead and pour the sidewalks on Washington Street, as well as the entryways into the parking lots. And that's what we're hoping and intending to do. At minimum, it is our goal to pour those entryways into that parking lot. On Washington Street, between Main Street and Michigan Avenue, we put the base coat of asphalt down. We were operating under the hope and belief, really more the hope, that the asphalt plants remained open until Wednesday. We had that hope. A little bit exhausted Saturday morning when I got called down to meet with them, and they were closing that afternoon. So we made the decision due to a lot more factors than I have the talent or education to relay, but it has to do with moisture content in the ground and moisture content within the asphalt that they're putting in, just to put the base coat down. They did what I will describe as put the asphalt in a ramp type fashion, going to where the entryways in the parking lot will be to aid the snow plows from being able to clear the parking lot appropriately without damaging curbs and that. We did put out on social media and through our email distribution list that we're going to leave that block closed to traffic for the next 14 days. That's at the recommendation of the asphalt company and our contractor, as it will allow the moisture, in my words, to evaporate and not damage the asphalt. So we'll monitor that. It is our goal to open it as soon as we can, but we are anticipating that to be out at the 14-day level. Water main, everything in Washington's underground. Water mains installed. Community gossip talked about water main has passed all of its mandatory tests and is online and ready to go. We have updated all, I think it was a total of 7 water connections. I think Julie experienced, I've had nothing but positive feedback from the owners of these buildings and the businesses on the professionalism of our contractor overseeing this project, as well as their performance. As I talked about, also the fire hydrant was moved to ensure we had that parking space on Main Street in front of the hardware. We made the decision that we will not install the downtown tables and benches and permanent structures that get affixed to the cement until next spring. We thought that was best, so that decision has been made. It's our goal to have streetlights up by the Christmas in the Village event on December 11th. The reality is we're working with a subcontractor who's busy juggling numerous jobs, but that is our goal. We have created contingency plans to ensure, and Alex will be given an update to the Christmas in a Village event, but we have certainly put together contingency plans not only for the Christmas in the Village event, but to ensure that we can open up the social district at least for that event. And our goal will be, because when we suspended the social district, I believe it stated we'd come back to the council. It might, and I'll have to review the minutes, might have given staff the ability to make that decision. But regardless, we will be in front of the council on December 6th, and I anticipate that being an agenda item. So how about I pause there, be happy to answer any questions specific to the project.
Yeah, Jim, in regards to the tables, the outdoor furniture not being put out till spring, I know the current downtown area proper, we kind of have some rules of the road as far as businesses, what type of paint they can use on their facades, so everything kind of is on the same motif. With saying that, obviously businesses are going to want to put out some of their own furniture, I guess, for lack of a better term, because I'm sure that if we're busy, there's not going to be adequate enough seating as it is with what's being provided. Is there something that maybe staff can look into, is maybe like putting some rules of the road out as far as, so everything kind of is within the same, genre of furniture, that's not the good term, but at least all looks kind of similar, so that we don't have somebody putting out a card table and chairs, and not that they do that, but, it
certainly
keeps it dressed up, I guess.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'd like to, if the council desires it, we certainly could put that together, as well as communities. That is the sidewalk of, if you will, the rules of the road, I think you mentioned, and having a consistent look. We've made a over $1 million investment to the downtown. We have coming up in a couple meetings an update on the historic district and what that means. So I think it fits as well. So yes, we can accomplish it without a doubt.
Is this something maybe January, you can have staff report back in January, I guess?
Yeah, if the council's comfortable with it, if I can report back on December 6th, an appropriate timeline. I'll make some initial inquiries this week at how in depth other communities have gone in this area. And I'll update you whether that's the second meeting in January or no later than the first meeting in February. Certainly we can pull it off. So.
Yeah, I'm totally in favor of that. I don't know about the rest of us, but we've invested a ton of the taxpayers' money in the downtown, and yeah, we need some sort of guidance criteria, acceptance of what we want to see, put there in place. So we would look forward to your guidance on that, if you would.
Yeah, and that gives us even a couple meetings for the Planning Commission / Downtown Development Authority Board to have input on that process as well.
Excellent idea.
Jim, if I could, first off, beyond a static regarding this conversation, this is something that I've been very passionate about, and in private conversation as well as I think public comments, I've reflected the fact that this weekend when we were looking at the downtown, it was phenomenal. You just feel so good about what we can be and what we are going to be. And as I mentioned before, what will our brand be? We have Cereal City, Motor City, Tulip City. What will Vicksburg be? What will we be known for? And I think that's what our community will certainly, come to a conclusion on. But from my perspective, you also see this beautiful streetscapes, sidewalks, roads. That's from about 18 inches down. And when you look from 2 feet up, what you see is a 150-year-old village, is what you see, with an eclectic mix of facades and paints and metal signs, wood signs, and God bless those business owners. They're making it happen. I grew up in Valparaiso, Indiana as a kid. This is a Rust Belt city by any means, like Gary, Indiana. Suit covered, red brick buildings. But the most interesting thing was 2 years ago, I happened to stop over, and I haven't been there in years, and I couldn't believe what I saw. It was an incredible transformation. And what you had was that you had an old city, much bigger than Vicksburg by all means. But what they did, though, I went and talked to owners, and I said, what happened? And they said one word. It was one person. And it was a mayor, a village manager, that said, you know what? We can be more than this. And he went around and talked to business owners, and he created what they called the carrot and the stick approach. The carrot was this public-private venture. How can we all work together in this realm so that we're all working for a common good? We know what we want to do. And the stick really was simply a facade ordinance. It was a very, very tight, very, very clear. And having said all this, I would just say if there's any interest, please look on the City of Valparaiso's website. I have their documents, but they do have a lot of information about this. And for me personally, and having grown up there, I can see what happened for them, and I can easily see how we could do that here, considering how invested people are in our community. So I just, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that attention to that.
I think Mr. Holmes pretty much wrapped it up as to what we're looking for. I think off and on, we've all had this comments at one point or another about the look and the feel of the downtown, and do we have a ordinance in place that gives us guidance and direction as to the expectations? And I think we would all agree, we'll take a voice roll call on that we would ask you to help us and assist in that venture and give us some guidance back.
Absolutely, and I think we all recognize it might be a multi-chapter report.
Absolutely.
Where we start out with furniture and we look and explore other things. Mr. Holmes has mentioned signs, those type of looks. We look at what available revenue sources we have to address that, which will all lead, again, I want to emphasize, the 22-23 will be an important fiscal year as we present that master plan and go through a whole 12-month process of having community input. And it leads and tailors right into that as well.
Well, those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? There you got it.
All right, and we'll update you, and with all that, maybe the second meeting in February. But we'll update you next week at a timetable. We'll pull it off good. So, any other question on infrastructure?
I was just wondering, now is Main Street fully paved, both layers and everything?
Yes, base
Okay.
is in, and it's
In the
topped.
final?
Yeah,
Okay.
and right now we're at times opening up just to Liberty Lane east and west from Prairie Street. And other times we have it fully blocked depending on how much construction workers we have down there and for their safety.
Okay.
But south of Liberty Lane will remain blocked until we have the appropriate one-way signage.
Got it.
Intersection marked there at Main and Washington, as well as the asphalt issue clarified.
Okay.
So I'd anticipate that being closed for those 14 days as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Any other questions on the project? In good news we didn't have enough to do, so we decided to put up a 6,000 square foot building at DPW. It is framed up. The trust were completed today, so hopefully we have the metal sides and roofing on its way, but that's up. The emphasis there, we anticipate next Monday where the salt is stored, which will be the far west end, that overhang that we've built, will pour the cement, and that cement is a graded mix to accompany the fact salt's going to be sitting on top of it. You also, we might have people see, I think 60 or 70 some 2-foot wide concrete and probably 2 foot high that stack on top of each other. That'll basically make a horseshoe shape around that salt barn that's fully roofed, fully sided. So it protects not only the building when the Bobcat goes in and scoops the salt, but make sure there's that building's going to be around for quite a while. So that our big debt of gratitude and shout out to the Road Commission of Kalamazoo, because they've stored our salt for quite some time. We were hoping to have the building up, and very appreciative of them storing the salt. So we hope to bring that back here in the next 10 business days when we have the facility to put it in. Any questions on the DPW building?
Yes, sir.
I did want to make a couple brief comments on the issue of manganese. Eagle is the oversight in this state for municipal water systems, and all of the village water is tested every month and is certified by Eagle with no issues. On the issue of manganese, I remind everyone that we put out an advisory. based on a federal advisory, and dates escape me, but I believe it was pre-2010, but we were always going to side on the for our citizens, and that's why we chose to put that advisory, and that's why we leave the advisory up, and that's why for now going on close to a year and a half, we've provided water for anyone who's asked for it, including a pregnant female, or some people have called me up and said, hey, I've got kids older. I mean, I'm not going to debate that. We've always have pallets of water that we now have, and we certainly deliver them. We're networked in with the hospitals and WIC program and other programs to be notified when someone who lives in our area, specific to the village, would be under that advisory. So I just wanted the council to be aware of that. And I've asked Alex to provide an update for the Christmas in the village.
Members of the council, it has been a difficult year, to say the least, in planning for Christmas in the village. On day one, the question was, are we going to have roads? At meeting two, the question was, will we have sidewalks for parade participants to stand on? Just this morning, we were talking about street lights, and if no street lights, what's going to cover those bases? I will also mention that the committee co-chairs, Natasha Hanischen and John DeBalt, have earned what money they don't get for doing this. I, on the other hand, have been assigned this as part of my duties, but they've been really wonderful to work with. And so this evening, I will give you the first shot at our event calendar for December 11th. Tomorrow we will make sure that the South County News has this information. Our social media has it. But there are reasons we were a little slow this year in getting those done. One also was, we're getting a new business in town, but that was a space we used last year. So that started some dominoes moving. Some things will be in different places this year. The Vicksburg United Methodist Church will have a craft and vendor market at 2017 South Main Street. That'll run noon to 5. The Wooden Stitch, which is a new business coming to town where the old Wrapped in Gratitude was, will be having a craft show. That's 117 East Prairie. That also will run from noon to 5. Wrapped in Gratitude, Oopsie Daisy, Silo Chic will be having special shopping events during their hours, so please check their hours. You can visit Santa and Mrs. Claus. They will be not behind glass, but at the Main Street Pub banquet room. Starting at 2 o'clock, they will go until the parade, and Santa told me this morning in a special visit to Vicksburg that after the parade they plan to take up their post again just in case any children were missed. There will be a craft making event put on by the Cultural Arts Center. That'll happen in the community center. It'll be an activity for kids and parents to work on together. We're also very sensitive to COVID numbers and people's concerns, so there will be take-home kits for those people that may not want to get into a crowded space. The Christmas parade, I'm going to back up again. There'll be downtown horse wagon rides, which have become a staple of our Christmas in the Village event. Turns out horses don't do well around traffic, and they don't do well on gravel. So this year we had to come up with another event to do a hayride through the Christmas card lane. So we have what's been described to me as a monster old tractor that's going to pull a hayride wagon that will leave from the corner of Main and Prairie, travel up north through the Christmas card lane, and then back for reloading. So that'll be available. And by the way, through our tremendous working partnership with the Historic Society, our Christmas card lane will double in size this year. The Christmas parade will begin at 6 p.m. The lighting ceremony near Oswald Park will take place immediately after the parade. We say near Oswald Park because Oswald Park is in the process of being tore up, some infrastructure added. So we anticipate blocking off a section of North Main, probably to the alleyway. We'll have entertainment there, a stage, some sort of abbreviated event, but the lighting ceremony will occur there. And if I can take just one more minute, I know it's tough being the last guy speaking when you're tired of listening to everybody. But you know, it's been a really tough year for our businesses too. Coming off of COVID and then going through this massive infrastructure project. And so I want to say thank you to our title sponsors, Frederick Construction, the Mill at Vicksburg, Main Street Pub, H&H Feed and Grain, Kelsey Credit Union, Grossman Horn, and Conzero, Edward Jones Investment, and the Distant Whistle. Those folks, along with other folks who've donated up to date, have brought in $7,000 for us to do this event, and we appreciate their work as well. I'll answer any questions you may have, or I'll go sit down and we can wrap this meeting.
Well, we saved the best for last, but sit down and wrap it up. Thank you, Alex, and thank you to all the sponsors.
Couple things to conclude briefly. We will have on the 20th of December a presentation reference a historic designation for the village and update in that area. I'm also trying to arrange for the 20th presentation on the plan for the golf course in 2022, that be presented. The second meeting in January will be the public presentation. We'll go into the same format we've done the last 4 years, where we have a work session at 6 o'clock with a public presentation from the auditors on the financial viability of the village in that, just to give an update on what's coming up here in the next couple months, and then we'll be right into budget season again.
It just seems like it was yesterday. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Alex. So that does lead us down to soon being concluding this meeting. We'll committee reports in front of us. Start with South County Fire, Mr. Olson.
Thank you. Thank you, President Frisbee. We had the CATS meeting and Fire Authority meeting both on the same day because of the holiday. The budget has been, for South County Fire Authority, has been submitted to Mr. Mallory. It will be coming before the council soon. So probably before or by the 1st of January, that will be up before the council.
If I can ask, just to make sure,
Yeah.
I don't believe that budget goes for approval at the fire board until February, does it?
They would like to have it done earlier, but I don't believe it does until February.
Okay,
no.
if you can just get back to me when they
Yeah.
need it, and I'll work with you on that.
Okay. Right now, we're still on Zoom meeting with the Fire Authority. The plan is, if everything goes good, we're going to go back to regular meetings in January. At that time, we're going to start having open meetings and open discussions about new fire departments for both Fulton and Vicksburg. Right now, we don't anticipate moving the Vicksburg station for at least a couple of years. We are dedicated to the fact we're going to keep it south of the railroad tracks. And the reason is, in case there is an emergency, which we've run into twice in the last couple of years with a train derailment, and last year there was a train blockage. And the fire truck had to respond to an emergency north of the tracks, had to go down to Highway Street, out to Portage, and then come back. Otherwise, we're bringing the trucks in out of Schoolcraft. So we are dedicated to making sure that the downtown and south of the railroad tracks is safe at all times. We've got a truck that's going in for service, needs a new light bar and new tires. We're looking at $2,500. That's coming out of the budget that's set aside. There is something like $1.8 million set aside. Now, don't get excited because that money's all pretty much being allocated for the future. New fire trucks, new equipment, replacement equipment, whatever. Yes, we are going to have to go to the voters at some point. This is why we are taking and going to have open meetings within the fire authority to discuss this. Where are we going to go? Where's the money going to come from? We know that it's not going to be easy. The plan that's in place right now is for 10 years. Well, the 10-year line is up, and what we're planning right now is for the next 50 years. So we're looking at, what kind of equipment are we going to need? How much is Vicksburg going to grow? If this building catches fire, what can we do? With the incident we had at the mill a couple of years ago where the gentleman fell through the roof, it took 45 minutes to get into the building and find him. It took another 45 minutes to get him out. If we'd had the equipment that we needed and the closest was Phoebus or Portage, we would have had the guy out within a few minutes. They were telling us it would have taken 45 minutes just to get a truck here. We've got to look at all of that. And there's, we know that there's going to be activities at the mill. How are we going to respond to that? So we have to look at location, response time, everything else. Speaking of response time, nationwide there's a shortage on ambulance drivers. And there's the response time to emergencies with ambulances is down. Luckily, we are up. So we are doing better than the national average, and we should be proud of that. And probably the worst thing that our fire authority had to deal with was on 131 and XY Avenue. Again, MDOT has got to do something about that. I don't know how many discussions we've had with MDOT, and that whole section is going to be rebuilt from Flower Field all the way to U Avenue. But these turnarounds have got to be dealt with and everything else. The speeds have got to be readjusted, and they just had another three semi-tractor trailer pileup there. The same intersection where the couple was killed from Schoolcraft here a few months ago. So the fire authority and MDOT, we're having these discussions, and it's got to be taken care of. So Schoolcraft Township, the fire authority is all going to be involved in that. So we are taking care of business. Thank you.
You might as well keep on with cats, if you would.
Okay. Cats, in case you haven't heard, there's a problem with Portage Road 994. They went to set the beams, and the beams aren't proper. They are unsafe beams. So they have to redesign the beams, and they're probably not going to be installed until spring. That project that started off at $79 million is up to $82 million. County's looking for a new administrator. They just passed a budget of $112 million. So anyhow, Metro Transit's been short on drivers. They just hired 6 new drivers, so they're improving their route service. Kalamazoo County Road Commission right now is looking for snowplow drivers, so if you know a trucker that's looking for a job. As Jim stated, the asphalt plants, they started shutting down Friday. So Julie Rogers sat in on the meeting, and with Sean McKean and Fred Upton, they're pushing for more infrastructure money for Southwest Michigan. They feel like we've been shorted in the deal, and for our population and our traffic flows and that, we need to be looking at more money. So that's my report.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll move on to South County Sewer. Mr. Keller.
We have not met since the last meeting. We actually meet tomorrow morning at 9:30. So it's at Pavilion Township. If anybody wants to join, we're in person. I did have an informal meeting with the chair of that, along with President Frisbee, a couple weeks ago, mainly to discuss some items regarding Vicksburg's participation in that board. And the other part of it was that they meet at 9:30 on Tuesdays, which is for people that have unelected full-time jobs. It's pretty tough to get to. So the board is, and also for citizens that want to attend those meetings, it's tough to get to. So they are going to be exploring, looking for alternative times to try to meet other than 9:30 on Tuesdays, so the fourth Tuesday of the month. So that's the report for them.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Reister? Tree?
Well, yeah, we have been going around the village, writing down where there are trees that are still in really good shape, like at Rebecca's house, and also marking where we could put new trees. Oh, sorry. I have a loud voice. We have set up maps, and we're going to meet on December 1st, and all of us are going to bring what we have looked at of the streets that we have done and mark it on these maps. And so by spring, we should have a pretty good idea of trees that need to come out, trees that are great and can stay, and places where we can put new trees. And we're hoping to have tree-lined streets in Vicksburg.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. Well, that leads us to trustees' time. And I'll start with, yes?
Well, hey, I was just going to say about the funeral home, Mcgowan, C-Corp. I'm just glad that you're staying in town and you're expanding. I used to talk to Marilyn Durham about how the funeral home used to lend the hearse out for the first ambulance service. People used to sleep in a cubicle in my building, and Anna Brown, she got to be over 100, I think, and she was one of the first people to be one of the ambulance drivers picking up people and stuff. So I'm just really glad that you guys are actually expanding, and you're just one of our grandfather businesses. I mean, that's been around forever. And also, I'm just glad that the commercial too is really just kind of a correction of current standards. So it's nothing earth-shattering. It's just getting up to code. So also, I want to say thank you to Gary Steensma for giving such a great quote to Vicksburg. He probably did this at cost. I'm just going to say that because he's a good guy.
Steensma's who we're using. It is, just so
It's
everyone's
changing.
aware, it's a state program. Any municipality has
Okay.
the availability to enter into this. No different than we've done with our patrol cars and that. I agree. Gary's a neighbor of mine and a great individual, but this followed state and village purchasing policy and is done under a competitive state bid process.
Okay. Well, thanks, Gary.
Trustee Reister?
Well, I've already had my say, but I just wanted to let you know that I think that you're looking into why some people were going out of town instead of staying here is exactly what you were talking about. And so I'm really, really glad to hear that you're going to work on that, because people want to celebrate a life. And so that's what was missing here. And so I'm happy to see that you're looking into that.
Trustee Olson?
Thank you. A couple of years ago, I was doing some research on a project, and a name of a person came up, William Lucking. I'd never heard of him before, so I clicked on his profile, and come to find out, I recognized the man. And he was an actor. He did a lot of movies and TV shows that we've all watched. Mission Impossible, The A-Team. He did Red Dragon and The World's Fastest Indian with Sir Anthony Hopkins. You don't get any better than Sir Anthony Hopkins. But his last gig was Piney Winston on The Sons of Anarchy. Now, I'm not a big fan of the show, but I know who the man is. And he recently passed away. The reason I bring this up is until a couple of years ago, I never knew who he was. And he was born June 17th, 1941, and he died October 18th, so roughly a month ago. But he lived and went to high school in Vicksburg, Michigan.
Oh, no kidding.
So it's amazing the little things that you learn, and that's why I love doing the research work and that I do so much. But I would have never known that this man lived in this community. Huh. So now I got to go out and find a 1959 yearbook, see if I can find him in it or not. So, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Danny. Trustee Holmes.
Thank you, Trustee Wagner. I'm all set, thank you.
Well played. Okay.
He's done. Well, that dovetail into mine then. That was an inside deal. Similar to mine, the reason why the village manager is wearing a Central Michigan hat, fire up chips. We had a friendly wager, and I would have honored had you not kicked a Cleo Pimpleton twice, and he ran it back for touchdown. So, and just so everybody knows, the leading rusher in the nation right now is Lou Nichols from Central Michigan University, and he's a freshman. So he'll be around for a few more years. But
What's that, Alex? The sound didn't go through? Okay.
All kidding aside, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully this year families will be able to gather more normally than they did last year. I do appreciate the input from residents. Whether it's favorable or unfavorable, it's still input, and it's important that people speak their minds. So I do want to say thank you very much. I hope everybody has a great holiday.
Thank you, Carl, and I'll wrap it up quickly, and I support what you just said. There's nothing more.
Fire up chips?
Okay. Fire up chips. Nothing more rewarding to me to get as many people in this community engaged in our daily life, and you can go back and look at the very first record that I ever put out and recorded here with this group, was that the lack of community involvement at our level was concerning. So it's great to see, the people step up, have voices, let it be known, and get active and involved. We have a great community, and it is just getting better every day. So I appreciate y'all's time. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Aye.